Those who are new to us, the Los Angeles Center of Photography is a nonprofit center in Los Angeles. We run classes right now. Currently, our classes are online, and we have teen classes and classes for adults. We have classes beginner through master classes. So check out our website at lacphoto.org. For those, we also have a really fun series that's been going on starting 2 weeks ago, which is a webinar series, which they're $35 for members and $45 for non-members. These are little condensed hour-and-a-half seminars given by photographers and professionals on various topics. And they're really great. And we have a whole slew of them coming up all summer and all fall. So check those out on our website, our webinars. Let's see, we also have conversations with artists, which will be starting in July. And Eric Joseph, who is sort of our print guru, will be doing an industry insider talks, talking with various industries, usually surrounding printing, and those are free for members. So while I'm talking about membership, if you want to become a member of LACP, it is $95 a year or $10 a month. And it's only $45 if you're out of state, you are a student or educator, or in the military. So go to our website and become a member, and you can hear about all these fun things to do. We have Julia Dean, our executive director, is on. She's one of the people called LAC Photography. She's waving right now. She is actually at our lovely center at the moment. So you can see some of the photographs in the background. Without further ado, we're going to just talk about, so Project 2020 was an exhibition. We did a call for entries in January, and we had Douglas Marshall was the juror. He is runs a gallery called Marshall Contemporary and has been a gallerist for many, many years with Peter Fetterman, and now has branched out on his own. He selected 12 artists to be part of this exhibition. We got their work into the gallery, we put it up on the walls, and that was the week we shut down. So unfortunately, nobody's been able to see the work. We hope that changes soon, but at the moment, we've just been running these artist talks so that the artists can show their work and talk about the various projects that they worked on. So I am going to read Douglas Marshall's statement about this show. And if you want to see the entire of the show, you can go to our website, and it's under exhibitions. It's all online. So Douglas Marshall said, after viewing nearly 200 individual portfolios, I found it incredibly difficult to select a dozen finalists. The projects exhibited, I feel, are those that are most successfully accomplished the artist's stated intent and were confidently edited, while providing a new platform for underrepresented stories and innovative approaches to the medium. As in many portfolio reviews in recent years, a clear takeaway of interest and optimism for me was the prevalence of socio-political and data-driven work being made by contemporary photo artists. Evidence of a universal need to do something and to stimulate dialogue when witnessing injustice or apathy. Many artists sought to address overlooked histories and stigmatized groups through aesthetically engaging and thoroughly researched work, some traveling great lengths on their own accord to complete their projects. Others engaged with the chemical and physical aspects of photography, exploring its unique ability to skew time and truth, while traditionally it is assumed to faithfully represent with instant accuracy. In the end, each artist's body of work submitted is worthy of an honest critique, and I hope that each applicant continues down their creative path and with renewed energy, inspired as I have been by their selected projects. So we have 3 artists presenting today, and I will just go ahead and introduce them in order. We are going to start with Mimi Fuenzalida. Did I do that right? And she will be speaking about her project, and I have to unmute you. Or you're going to unmute yourself. So yes. I'm just going to read what Douglas wrote about your piece and then your bio. So Mimi's project is called I Do Still, a deeply personal, beautiful, and ultimately traumatic story of images by Mimi Fuenzalida inspires a level of universal human empathy few can. Perhaps it's their seemingly domestic neutrality on the visual surface that allows for such emotional impact as a whole. The artist's use of quotes on each image, brief insights of context, is a welcome addition to the stills. The series left me stunned and poignantly humanizes an important point of sociocultural consideration. Mimi is a visual storyteller working in the fields of photography and film. She was born and raised in Chile and in Argentina, having relocated to Los Angeles in her early 20s to pursue her passion. She brings an intimacy, humanity, and connection to her work, which allows her subject stories to emerge. She works in commercial, portrait, and long-term visual stories. Her commercial photography, including art direction, can be seen in Elle Decor, Departures Magazine, Gallery Magazine, and various online publications. Her work has been featured in YourDailyPhotography.com, LACP's first portrait exhibition, and last year she was selected as one of the 12 photographers to be part of the Lens Culture Visual Storytelling Masterclass held in Amsterdam over a 6-month period. Mimi's film work began by creating legacy documentaries privately commissioned by families, and then moved on to working on projects such as Cuba in Transition, offering a window into the lives of Cubans and their thoughts about the political changes that their country is undergoing. Street Poets, the poem that saved me, sharing the stories of 5 poets that while incarcerated were introduced to the art of poetry as a way of healing and breaking the cycle of violence in which they were born and which led them to become juvenile delinquents. So Mimi, I'm going to turn it over to you now to show your work and to let us know more about it. So thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sarah, and this Center of Photography for hosting this event. I know that life has been a bit unusual for all of us, and we all had to adjust. So I appreciate the opportunity to show the work and have a mini gallery exhibition online. And to the juror as well for having selected this project. So the project is called I Do Still, and I'm gonna begin by telling you that one of the subjects of my project is present and is gonna be part of it, and that's Scotty Jeanette. And if you wanna raise your hand, yes. So I thank you so much, Scotty, Jeanette, and we thank Marcy for the willingness to open your story to me and with the intimacy and honesty that you did, because it allowed me to really share a little bit of a window, something very beautiful. I met Scotty at an event that a friend of mine who actually is probably here, Elena, had invited me to, and it was a meditation, and then there was a very short intro hosted by Scotty Jeanette, and she briefly spoke about her changes that she had undergone with her partner, who she called my love. And in those 5 minutes, there was something that I felt the impulse, and I heard inside of me, I want to meet them and I want to tell their story. And so I told my friend who had brought me to the event, and she said, I'll introduce you because I know Scotty. So that happened, and Scotty Jeanette was really open from the very beginning. And so we began this relationship where I was allowed into their home and invited and share very openly their story. I will share only a little bit and then show you the work, because I think the work speaks for itself. But to me, this is a story that transcends all the boundaries that are put to us by culture, by gender, by situation, by any circumstance. And to me, is a beautiful testimony of love. And so just with that, Scotty is going to, so the project is a series of 14 photographs, and they're accompanied by quotes by Marcy and Scotty. It's their relationship we're sharing. And so since Scotty's here, Scotty Jeanette is going to be sharing and reading her portion, and I'm going to be reading for Marcy. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen with you. Are you all able to see it? Okay, you can actually answer me. So I'm going to assume you are.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, thanks. So this is Scotty, Jeanette, and Marcy. I do still.
What people need to understand about being transgender is that you don't have anything but your own words or what someone else has invented to describe what you're going through. And those words never fit all the way.
For 20 years, Scott brought Marcy her coffee in bed, a ritual they both cherish. But one of those mornings, he burst into tears and confessed,
I don't know who I am anymore. I think I'm a woman.
I had so many I want to leave thoughts. I don't get this. Fix him, I was praying. Marcy.
I came out to Marcy 5 years before I came out to the rest of the world. So we had 5 years of trying to deal with it. What we were really trying to do was our inner work. We were sitting with those decisions or revelations. I started going to therapy. I knew I had 6 weeks to get a diagnosis because it was costing $175 an hour. Tell me what I am, a transsexual or just a crossdresser?
Something started to break down, including my own concepts about everything. What is love? What is commitment? What is a marriage? What is a husband? What is a wife? Marcy.
Surgery always seemed inevitable, even when I rationalized that it was going to be in my next lifetime. Dear God, let me be myself, the woman that I am. That was my prayer.
The discussion of surgery got postponed when Marcy got diagnosed with cancer. The focus shifted to Marcy and her health. When Scotty Jeanette said she wanted to get her ears pierced, I still wasn't ready for the whole 9 yards, but it was sort of a shift because I said, okay, let's go to Claire's. In retrospect, that's when I became engaged in the process, and it was us instead of you, Marcy. We talked about things. I would ask Scotty Jeanette questions like, what is it like to have boobs? Because she was blossoming with the hormones. Marcy. Scotty Jeanette noticed that when they got in bed, Marcy wouldn't touch her. I don't know how to touch a woman, Marcy admitted. And Scotty Jeanette explained.
That's what we had to learn. We had to develop a new sense of intimacy.
I realized that this is the same soul, heart, spirit that I've always been with. That didn't change. When I realized that, I thought, so what? What's different? Marcy. In 2017, Scotty Jeanette had her long-awaited gender affirmation surgery. 6 months later, Marcy's cancer came back. In October of 2018, with Scotty Jeanette at her side, Marcy died.
She was at peace, joyful, even ecstatic as she transitioned. And I was shattered into a million pieces.
Thank you, Scotty.
You're welcome.
Thank you
So
both
that-
so much for sharing your story. That's just incredible.
It was a really beautiful experience for me. It was new, and I just have a lot of respect for what it takes to create a relationship for Scotty and Marcy to allow me in. And I think from the project, that's one of the main things for me, like being a witness of their story. In a witness that in a way allows me to take this out to other people, because I believe that there is a lot of treasures in it. And it takes two people allowing themselves to be extremely vulnerable in front of somebody else to do that. So yeah, thank you for participating and listening and being part of this.
So you talked about what the impetus was. You just sort of felt called to this. And then once you got into it, did you, I mean, obviously it took a very different turn than I think you had imagined. You thought it was just going to be a story about love and about the love between two people. And then obviously Marcy got sick, and you didn't show much of that. Was that just a decision not to sort of show that part of their relationship?
Marcy had been sick before I met them, but her cancer was in remission when I came in. And so, yes, it was not the focus of that. In 2018, I moved to London. And so I wasn't there when Marcy got sick at the last time, and so that was one thing, part of it. We remain in contact, and Scotty and I have seen each other every time I go to LA, and so we did one session after one of the times I came back, and I had printed. Not all the photos we did are here. Their story is, you're seeing just a tiny bit of their story, the essence perhaps, if I can say that, but their story has so many colors, you know, and so we did a lot of different photos, and then the process of putting a story together for something like this, you know, the editing, I cut away for different reasons. But both of them, Marcy and Scotty Jeanette, they both wrote books. Marcy wrote a book, and it was going to come out during the time we were doing photos. And so one of the pictures that I did, besides photographing them both in their home, I had a studio, and they both came separate and together. And when Marcy was coming, I asked her if she would bring the script for her book that was ready, and it wasn't in a book form yet, so it was the pile of papers. And I said, well, would you mind like throwing it in the air? And it's gonna be messy, but how about we do that? And she was like, she was so open. She said, yes, let's do it. And that image has always stayed with me, because to me, in a way, represented after. This is not knowing what was going to happen, but I'm sharing this because when I saw Scotty Jeanette after Marcy had passed away, I had printed that in large for her, because to me it represented Marcy's process, which was all her layers of things that she went through to finally say, it doesn't matter. I just love this soul, and this is who she's always been, and even more so now. And so she threw kind of like all those thoughts in the air, and so that's when we saw, and that's why I was not part of that process. And I also think it came pretty quickly, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
We're getting a lot of things in the chat, just people talking about how beautiful the poetry of the images and the poetry of the story are immensely uplifting and enriching. Thank you. What a moving and powerful journey. What a great positive example for all of us. So I think that's absolutely true. And we can revisit this. If you have more questions for Mimi, you can certainly put them in the chat and we'll revisit them at the end. But thank you so much for you for doing that, and for Mimi for sharing that, and Scotty Jeanette for being with us and doing your part for that. That was really an unexpected surprise and wonderful to hear your voice actually read the part of the story. So thank you both. Our next artist is Donna Garcia, and I'm actually going to read her bio and then read about what Douglas wrote, just to set it up a little bit. So Donna, you're unmuted? Good. So, so Donna Garcia is a lens-based artist whose work illustrates a semiotic dislocation that has been organically reconstructed in a way that gives her subjects a voice in the present moment, something they did not have in the past. Her images rise above what they actually are and become empathetic recreations in a fine art narrative. She often utilizes self-portraiture with motion to provide an indication of the other in her work, a surplus threat to the perpetuity of our modern day grand narratives in defining elements like gender and race. She has an MFA in photography from the Savannah College of Art and Design. Her work has been exhibited and published internationally, and she is a 2019 nominee of Regeneration for the Challenges of Photography and the Museum of Tomorrow, Emerging Artists to Watch at the Musée de l'Assise in Lausanne, Switzerland. Her project is called Indian Land for Sale. And Indian Land for Sale by Donna Garcia sheds an artistic, albeit subdued and haunting light over one of America's darkest historical infringements on humanity. The images she has created to interpret stories from the Trail of Tears don't feel overly dramatized despite their unsettling nature. On an aesthetic level, her photographs are texturally and tonally vivid, symbolic of the undoubtedly strong imprint left on the memories of survivors. So thank you, Donna.
Hi, thanks. I'm going to turn off my video and start my presentation. But I do want to thank Sarah and LACP for this great opportunity and this fantastic exhibit and all of your help, as well as Douglas for choosing my body of work. So let me share my screen. All right, can you see it?
Yes.
Great. So good afternoon. As I said, I am Donna Garcia and my project is Indian Land for Sale. The objective of this body of work is to restore what has been lost. In 1830, the United States government, led by President Andrew Jackson, forcibly relocated Native populations east of the Mississippi in order that white farmers could take over their land. The event led to hundreds of thousands of deaths, as well as the extinguishment of the Native narrative from American history. My series, Indian Land for Sale, attempts to recreate the horror of this event from the perspective of the indigenous tribes. My images serve to replace what has been lost from the official historical archives. Here is a map of what we know as the Trail of Tears. In 1830, the Indian Removal Act was enacted. Following its signing, the American government began forcibly relocating East Coast tribes across the Mississippi from their homes. President Jackson declared that Indian removal would strengthen the southwestern frontier, clearing Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi of their Indian populations would enable those states to advance rapidly in population, wealth, and power. The removal included many members of the Cherokee, Muskogee, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Choctaw nations from their homelands to Indian territory in eastern sections of present-day Oklahoma. The Georgia state government and Andrew Jackson had plans for indigenous acreage. Systematic hunts were made to force indigenous people from their ancestral grounds. Flyers began to circulate hailing Indian land for sale. White farmers flocked in droves to auctions of indigenous ancestral land that was still, up until 1838, being occupied by its native people. A Georgia volunteer, later a colonel in the Confederate service, said, "I fought through the Civil War and have seen men shot to pieces and slaughtered by the thousands, but the Indian removal was the cruelest work I've ever known." The trail to Indian territory was a 1,000-mile walk and took 116 days from Georgia, walking all day and only being able to stop at night to bury the dead. Between the years of 1830 and 1838, 100,000 indigenous people were removed from their ancestral homes. It probably was more. Although no one is sure of the exact number, approximately 22,000 Muskogee and approximately 17,000 Cherokee were removed by 1831. But not all indigenous people left between 1830 and 1831 when the act was originally signed, specifically the Cherokee. Many stayed, thinking they would be allowed to live peacefully or have the ability to fight back, actually winning several legal battles against the removal order. It was in 1838 that 7,000 US soldiers were sent into Georgia to enforce the final evacuation. The Cherokee, Muskogee, Shawnee, and Choctaw villages were invaded, and the people were forced to leave at gunpoint with only the clothing on their back. For the approximately 1,800, probably more, who resisted, they died of starvation and disease while imprisoned in internment camps just for refusing to leave their homes. For this final clearing, historians have noted that the Army deliberately routed the march, specifically of the Cherokee, to pass through areas known for cholera epidemics, such as Vicksburg, hoping the disease would kill the indigenous people due to their lack of immunity. A Cherokee survivor of the trail told her granddaughter, "The winter was very harsh, and many of us no longer had shoes. Our feet froze and burst as we left bloody footprints in the snow. We were not allowed to stop to bury our dead. Many mothers carried their dead children miles until we stopped at nightfall. All night, you could hear only digging." It is estimated that half of the total population of Cherokee and Choctaw were wiped out, and 1 in 4 Muskogee, probably more. The deportation of indigenous tribes along the Trail of Tears was an act of genocide that has been conveniently forgotten today. Indigenous tribes resigned to reservation living in order to preserve what little was left of their culture. This project is important to me personally because of my personal heritage, but also because in 2018, when I was asked to create this work for an exhibition at the Center for Civil and Human Rights in Atlanta, there was no mention of the Trail of Tears, the removal or consequential genocide of indigenous tribes anywhere in the museum. This was part of the installation for my work. This is the lobby of the Center for Civil and Human Rights. As I researched the project further, I realized that there was no information anywhere, not even at the Atlanta Historical Center archives or museum, or even institutions where the trail started. I collaborated with a sculptor to develop the frame for the work that was to represent a modern interpretation of home. And at the end of the exhibition and the installation, it was symbolically burned. It is clear that the genocide of indigenous tribes was thorough and complete, as nothing is left of their history. Unfortunately, these historical photographs reflect a narrative that is more familiar in 2020 than distant, as the federal government is currently attempting multiple land grabs of previously protected trusts from Massachusetts to California. This March, the federal government of the United States revoked reservation designation for the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe and has removed their 300 acres of ancestral land on Cape Cod from federal trust. This recent government land grab is raising grave concerns among indigenous advocacy groups across the country that all tribes could now be at risk again. If you want to help, go to sign.moveon.org and lend your name to keeping indigenous land with its people. And that's my presentation.
Wow, Donna, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I personally had no idea. And if you want to share yourself again, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you are. Good. I was seeing someone else's kitchen. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, this is an incredibly, obviously, just moving and deeply felt project, and one that it was astounding to me. I read that you said that there's nothing in Atlanta about this, about the Trail of Tears, that there's nothing in the Historical Society. That's just incredible that we've wiped out all history of this genocide. But let's also talk a little bit about your process, because it's really interesting how you are not a documentary photographer. You somehow embody what is happening and show the work, and it's very moving and connected. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I would describe myself as a lyrical documentarian, and I focus a lot on, typically before this, it was historical groups of women. And sort of giving them a voice in the present that they didn't have in the past through the recreating these different scenarios. I often use self-portraiture and kind of embody, as you said, my subjects. One of the reasons that I typically like using motion is because it creates sort of a liminal in between space where it's not in one place or another. And in that liminal space is where we can see ourselves or the other in ourselves, which tends to create empathy when you can see yourself in someone else or their situation. So that's kind of what my work is about in general. And to get back to what you said earlier about finding no record, it was amazing to me that no archival footage is available on the indigenous population that was once here. The genocide was so complete that nothing remains to archives here. And what's even more unbelievable to me is that every time I would ask somebody, when I was doing research at the Atlanta Historical Society or other institutions, there's some museums in areas where the trail started, I would say, I cannot believe that you have no record of this. And they would just kind of roll their eyes at me and say, yeah, no. And another interesting thing to note is typically the land that was sold off, that was indigenous sacred land, was later used for plantations to enslave another group of people.
Wow. And so where did you find your information from? So who does have any records of this?
Yeah, so mostly had to go either directly to the source and to talk to indigenous organizations. My heritage goes back to actually the Wampanoag tribe, so I had some connections there that were able to connect me with others, and then doing some online research is where I found most of my information and was able to get a lot of the quotes and kind of piece things together. So if it's for like primary research, yeah.
That's just incredible, and that it's going on still today. That's amazing. That what you've just showed us, and several people in the chat have asked about posting the link. I know that it's on moveon.org if you go there, but I'm assuming we can post the link to the actual petition later on. A lot of people have just said what wonderful images and a much needed story. Yeah, that is just horrifying that it's still happening today. That these land grabs are still going on, and that the Native people are not protected. Yeah.
And I'll just add really quickly, this was done, there was a situation in California where this happened with the government trying to grab like 500 acres of land in trust. They fought it and ended up winning. And then this land grab in Massachusetts happened during the height of the COVID-19 epidemic, where indigenous populations are being killed at a much higher rate on reservations right now, and are not being provided with government help as they were told that they would be. There's no funding. And so all of this is happening at their most vulnerable time.
And I'm so surprised. I'm from Massachusetts, but I mean, Massachusetts, you wouldn't think would be one of the places that would not, protect the indigenous people. So I'm just surprised that this is happening there too. So thank you so much for sharing that. The work is really beautiful. It's really moving, and your process is really interesting, that you translate this horrifying story into these beautiful black and white images. So thank you so much for sharing this. And yeah, if you could post in the chat at some point how people can sign the petition.
Okay. Thanks for your help.
Thank you. Okay. So, and now for our last artist, Jorge Katzenberger. George, are you still there somewhere? I'm going to try and find you.
I am indeed.
Okay. Hi, George.
Hello.
George is an advertising photographer who has specialized in product and advertising photography and has owned the Katzenberger Photography Studio in Santa Ana since 1986. He teaches photography workshops and classes for the city of Mission Viejo, Irvine Fine Arts Center, and has guest lectured at Saddleback College, the Cannon Learning Center, and USC. Although shooting digital for all other commercial work, George also shoots black and white film and a 4x5 view camera, documenting buildings, dams, bridges, etc. for the Historical American Building Survey, HABS, and the Historical American Engineering Record, HARE, sections of the Library of Congress, which, if you all don't know about, the Library of Congress has an incredible resource of photographs, and almost every historic building has been photographed by people like George. So born in Seattle and raised in Garden Grove, California, George's interest in photography began in 1974 when he found an SLR camera and took a beginner class. George went on to earn a photography degree at Orange Coast College. In 1976, George got a job as the photographer at a novel new technology store called The Candid Computer, shooting portraits of the public in a mall. The system used a TV camera connected to a digitizer, a 16-bit computer, and a 7-pin dot matrix printer. As a result, George is probably Orange County's first non-scientist digital photographer. George's true love, however, is shooting documentary projects. His current projects include the Imposter Project, in which full-size artificial trees found in suburban environments are revealed by using infrared photography. The critically acclaimed Imposters work has been growing since 2006. And this is what Douglas Marshall had to say about the Imposters. Jorge Katzenberger's series of Imposters shows a creative and intelligently humorous technical use of the medium through his infrared docu-landscapes. The presence of these cell phone tower trees have always amused me, but Katzenberger has really exposed them in an informative way that leaves the viewer to reconsider taking our urban landscapes at face value. It is not only a unique idea, but well executed with strong compositions that would hold their own even without the magical revelation of dark pretenders. So George,
Hello.
I invite you to go share your work with everyone now.
Okay. Am I on yet?
You're on, but you're not, we don't see your screen yet.
Oh, okay. What do I do for that?
You have to share, go to the bottom and share screen.
Share screen. Well, that shows my work. Not sure what I did. Can you hear me still?
Yep, and we're seeing your screen now. So,
Okay, so you see my artwork.
yep, we see them as just thumbnails now.
Thumbnail, nobody needs to see what I what I look like. But I must say I have a rather cold beard. Would you believe I was clean shaven when this whole thing started? I'm kidding. Okay, so let me read from my art, you know what I call it. Okay, so I'm just gonna start reading. This photographic documentary is composed of photographs revealing the strange existence of intentionally hidden full-size artificial trees scattered throughout our environment. You can see this tree, right? Everybody?
Yes, but why don't you, can you double click so it's larger? We can just see the thumbnail.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
That's too big. Is that?
we're not seeing it. So I think you have to stop sharing your screen again and then start sharing while it's already big.
Okay. Try that. Like now.
Just, yeah, do it again.
Did that work?
Nope, we're still not seeing your screen yet.
Oh,
Did you click on share screen?
yeah, I couldn't see it though. Let me see, back to here. Can you still see me?
We can see you, yes.
Okay, good. Let me get this up to where I can see it. All right. I practice it. At least I thought I did. Okay, now, do you see that?
No.
Okay, that's Photoshop. Okay, come on. Go back to you guys. There you are. Share screen.
Yeah, and then you have to click share the screen again.
Oh,
Like
again?
when it comes up, you have to click whatever it is. There you go.
No,
Oh,
okay.
but now we're seeing the thumbnails again.
So how about now?
Nope.
Oh, nuts. It's not showing, Bridge isn't showing it.
Well, okay, so when you go to share your screen, you have to pick the screen that has the big one up.
Oh.
It'll give you a choice. So stop sharing your screen again.
All right. Sorry, everybody. I thought I had it figured out.
It's okay, we'll get there.
All right. Now, how about that? No?
Nope, not yet.
Oh, come on.
So when you hit share screen, a bunch of screens should come up, whatever you've got up on your computer, and then you pick the one that's got the big tree. And then say, click again.
Okay. How's that?
Nope.
Nope, that's Photoshop. That?
No, so if you open it after you've already shared your screen, we're seeing the thumbnails again, it won't show the pop-up. So you have to keep the sunset tree big.
Yes.
Okay, and then stop sharing screen.
Oh, all right. Let me get that big again. Oops, here we are. Stop share. Okay, and now share again.
When you share again, choose the big tree. If you can see, you should be able to see it. Not all the thumbnails.
How about that?
There you go. You got it. Perfect.
Oh, so that's it. Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
All right. How about that? All right. Okay, so mouse disconnected itself. Okay, intentionally hidden full-size artificial trees scattered throughout our environment. These imposters are seen in our school playgrounds. Oh, now it won't let me advance. Murphy's Law, right? I thought I practiced it. You guys are hearing my ding, right? Come on. Well, how about that? You can hear me, right?
Mm-hmm. We can hear you. So you can't use your right and left key to advance?
Stop. Okay, now.
Can you start it
Again.
bridge and slideshow mode?
Is that showing?
No.
There. Is that it? Can you see that?
Nope, you got to share your screen with us again.
All right. All right. Got to get you back up to the top. Share screen. Then I got to go to here, I guess. Oh, wait a minute. I think I know what I'm doing wrong. Let me try that. Okay.
Yeah, that was the thumbnails.
I got to click on desktop.
Yeah.
Then this might work. Now, do you see that?
Yep.
You do?
Yep. Can you
And
advance?
do you see that one?
Yep. It's working perfectly. Good.
Okay, good, good. All right. Imposters are seen in our school playgrounds, our parks, in church parking lots, and even in pristine natural settings. In what is known as stealth by the industry that hides these trees, they can often be virtually undetectable. But of course, a close-up is another matter. By using infrared photography, I betray these dark pretenders beside spectral white but genuine trees and reveal blurring boundaries between the real and the surreal. Now, if you've seen infrared photography before, you know that real trees come out white, but the fakes are, can you see me still? Got me a notice about, okay, so they're on the opposite end from infrared being dark green, and they just appear as black. And they reflect only black rather than infrared light, so they don't appear white at all. Okay, now, when they're near, let me read this part. Imposters don't sway in the wind. Imposters don't burn in forest fires. Imposters are classified as towers, and when near airports, they have red warning lights on top. Imposters have radio antennae that are not always well hidden. This one's in Corona, it's terrible. Imposters are planted by the cell phone industry. Most people never even notice and would rather have imposters than do without cell phones, and I have a cell phone as well. Now here's what we're talking about. This is taken from with an extreme wide angle lens, and this is called roots. You can see the bolts that hold it down. Now on the other side of these buildings out there in the parking lot, it doesn't look like all these behind the scenes stuff. It just looks like a really nice tree. Like the really nice tree on the top of this one. Usually they have a building that houses all of the computers and backup systems and all that kind of stuff. But in this case, since it's on a hill in Yorba Linda, it doesn't have a building that's just hidden inside the hill. Okay, so a lab called Image Control, friends of mine, wanted to calibrate their developing process, and everybody, their friends, shoot a roll of film for them so they can recalibrate. And so I took infrared, because I said I hadn't had that since school. What the heck, let's try it. When we got the negatives back, we realized that imposters were going to always be black. You can see the one that looks white on the negative. It turns out it was, can you see the whole screen? I seem to be seeing you guys. But you can see
we can see your whole screen, yep.
The whole screen, okay. And so it came out black. And realizing that always shooting these fake trees, they were going to always be black. And I realized, well, heck, I've got a documentary I can do on a expose of all these fake trees all over our environment. And they are all over, of course. And one of the advantages of using the high-speed Kodak infrared film, which is now obsolete, too bad, it's the only one that went all the way up to 900 nanometers, which is just shy of heat, is that it had a high shutter speed. In spite of the fact that you had a really dark red filter over it, it still had a high shutter speed. If you're wondering, that ape in the background belongs to a car dealership with one of those giant blow-up. This is the smallest tree I ever saw. Thank goodness I could shoot fast. Now, in this case, this is out in, oh, never mind, Corona. And the reason the horse's foot is disappearing, he's in a puddle of, with lots and lots of algae in it. And it is doing that infrared, reflecting the infrared light thing. You can, the reason the trees reflect away the infrared light is because they don't want to be hot all day long, and the infrared spectrum being right next to heat. You can test this for yourself by walking on real grass barefoot, been in the sun all day, and it won't hurt your feet. But try walking on artificial grass, you'll be sorry that you did, because it does not reflect away, it just absorbs it. So I discovered later that I had a camera that could see infrared light without that expensive modification, the $400 or so that you can. And so one of the first things I did is went back and reshot the 5 Palms picture. This one is in Big Bear, and what cracks me up about this is this dark black tree on the church is kind of evil looking on church property, go figure. So now one of the byproducts is that you have to use this filter here, which cuts out every last bit of infrared light. I'm sorry, visible light, leaving only infrared. And as a result, you have rather long shutter speeds in order to achieve a decent f-stop for infrared, like 11 or 16 or 22. So this is a 30-second exposure, 10 seconds of which is engine locomotive. And it usually we're running about 20, 25, 30 seconds for these shots. So in this case here, you can see that the clouds are a bit blurred. This is in Yorba Linda, and there's its little support building. Now this is in Garden Grove at Walton's Pond, which is now a drainage ditch reserve pond. You can see the clouds are blurred. I got really lucky in that the ducks held still for 30 seconds. The water didn't, but the ducks did. And here, this is that same tree I showed you earlier with the red lights on the top, called Approach to John Wayne. It's under the landing pattern. And a lot of these trees that have, these fake trees, of course, that have red lights on the top, there's many, many tall, real trees that are taller, but being that it's a tower, not a tree, it has to have the light. Now, these things are everywhere. Here's one out in Adelanto, desert scene. You can see it in the background on the right there. And I do mean everywhere. This is coming down Highway 18. That's approaching Big Bear. That's the desert in the background. And that one tree exists because of a Boy Scout camp down below. You really, the black and white, it really stands out. And in this case, we only saw this tree. Now remember, this whole scene is green and the trees are pretty good. You saw that first shot. And the only reason I noticed this because we were on a ski lift, and we went back down to the valley and I couldn't find it because it just blended in. So I had to shoot it in infrared, find out where it is, log that in, go back and reshoot it. And that's what we did there. This is on a way to Glen Oaks near Yucaipa, a rather recent shot. It was a giant rainstorm in Orange County, and I realized that the Santa Ana River could be at flood stage, if you call 2 feet flood stage. So I drove real quick over to this one I knew existed to get this shot in Santa Ana near Fairview Street. Okay, now this is just north of, what is that called? Bridgeport, north of Bridgeport. This was 6 degrees, really, really cold out, but that's, it looks like somebody's little cabin. Of course, it's the support building. This is in Nevada, very close to a golf course, and also very cold. This one is in Nellygale, back in Orange County. And what's funny about this is a black horse and a girl dressed in black galloped past this entire scene during its 30-second exposure and didn't hold still in one spot long enough to get recorded. It cracks me up to this day. Okay. Now, what Christmas tree lot would be complete without having a black cell phone tower for sale? Now, in this case, they're not always pine trees. They are cypress trees in this case. And the reason that is black grass is it's fake grass, and it's covering, this is El Toro Memorial, so it's covering the dirt. The real grass, as you can see, is kind of stacked up against that tree to be installed later, I guess. They have palm trees. This one is out in Palm Springs. It's a rather interesting one. And in this one, near the 5 and 55 freeway, is a square trunk. This is an early one, and I thought that was the way to go here. And you can see there's patterns on it to try and make it look realistic. Silly, aren't they? And this is even sillier. The antennas are inside of those fake palm balls. And this is a recent installation, as you can see by the real trees that haven't even been opened up yet. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Now, they also come as saguaro cactuses. If you look at the top near on the big, large size, you can see the gap where the antenna, that top comes off to service the antennas. Now, some of these are really detailed. You can see that they have some damage looking on the branch on the left, on the arm on the left. And these needles are painted on. This is the same tree, but the rock on the left is actually where all the computers and all that other stuff is housed. It's rather large in the distance beyond, but it's got a lid that opens up with a padlock on it. It's kind of funny. Down there in Tucson, this is a spot at where there's 4 different saguaro trees, quote unquote trees. And you can see they even put a nice fake owl hole up there on the tree on the left. Just like the holes in the real trees, which are saguaro cactuses, which are white. This is near Yucaipa. They make them as eucalyptus trees. And this is one where I stitched a couple of shots together. And you can see that's a eucalyptus tree. Okay, so here's another eucalyptus. This is station number 38, which is a training station. People have apparently donated cars so they can practice the jaws of life and all of that. And they got a car over on the side. You can't see it, but it's extremely rusty because it has burners underneath so they can practice putting out car fires. That station is quite a crack up. Okay, so from the categories, the expression, you're only as good as your last shot. These 2 were shot in March and April. 2 eucalyptus trees together, and here's one up where Tolo, where it meets the toll road. Also hilarious if you ask me. And okay, so I believe that's it. Let's see if I can stop sharing here. Okay, now that's back to me again. Hello, everybody. Questions?
That was great, George. That's really fantastic. I don't know that you really explained for those on the call who may not know what infrared photography is or how it got started, or and then I'm just curious because I think you transitioned from infrared film to digital, but you kind of did that really quickly. So
yes.
Tell us about
Okay.
that.
Okay. Well, infrared film was actually way back in the 30s. Yeah, there were flash bulbs that were infrared flash bulbs, and when one of those would go off, you wouldn't even see the light. But if you had infrared film, you could see it. And who was that guy? The Ouija has some pictures inside of theaters shot of people making out, and they don't even know he did the shot. Maybe you guys have seen those. So. Yes, film was in fact, the infrared film that Kodak made is gone now, but it was wonderful. It was the only ones that went all the way up to next door to heat. Now, digital cameras can see it, but almost all digital camera manufacturers put in a hot filter cutoff, which cuts off all the infrared light. So they don't have to try to calibrate their color dealing with infrared color, which, as maybe you've seen, is very strange. But I found the camera that I happen to have, I found online that I don't need to get that expensive process, $400 to get the infrared cutoff filter removed. And once you do that, that camera is not usable for color anymore. And then when you use a digital camera that can actually now see infrared light, you have to use a filter. That's that 87C filter I showed you real quick. It cuts off all the visible light and leaving only the infrared light, which we can't see. Snakes can, but we can't. And that's why I say the exposures ended up being rather long because you've cut away all the infrared light.
And infrared reads heat, right? Isn't that what so you're saying?
No, infrared is just next door to heat. It's on the far side of red and infrared,
Okay.
but and then that's next door to heat. Yeah.
Okay.
Heat
And so
starts at
flowers
1,000.
give off heat, or they more heat than trees do.
Yeah, the trees reflect away the infrared light because if you give it enough time in the sun, it will be hot. It's like I say, it's a infrared. That film in the camera, once you remove the hot filter, is all the way up to 900 nanometers, and heat begins at 1,000 nanometers and up higher from there.
Okay.
Whatever that means.
You're getting a couple of questions. One said,
Go ahead.
Somebody said, do you know where these tower trees are made, or what companies make, I guess, how they're made, or where?
Well, yeah, there's several manufacturers. There's one of the largest ones is inland of Carlsbad, and I got a tour, and it's really funny. There are several, and but they're probably the preeminent. And the guy met me, and we went up to his office on the second floor. But as we walked down the hallway, he showed me a graph of the growth of their dollars in the, well, let me first explain. These people made fake trees for inside of giant hotel lobbies for years and years and years. So then they got into the fake trees for the cell phone industry to hide the antennae, I don't know what. But anyway, he showed me this graph, and he said, okay, you see how the infrared tree sale, the fake tree sales go to the top of the chart and stops. I said, well, yeah. He says, well, if it's a chart, it would go into the second floor. That's how much that part of their business. And indeed, they had 4 or 5 trunks that had been delivered, and they put fiberglass fake bark on it. I have a collection of leaves and fake bark and all that kind of stuff, where maybe if anybody wants to have a show with those things on it. So yeah, any other questions?
Somebody said, what is your tracking tree process? So do you just shoot a lot and find them or do you see them and you go shoot them, or?
Yeah, I tell you what, here's the thing. Once you get a handle on it, the trunks are always perfectly straight. The leaves are always one color. They're never fall color, spring green color. They're always just one color. And they become easy to spot once you've learned what they look like. And they come as palm trees, feather palm, fan palm, oak trees, and there's a lot of pine trees that now have oak leaves on them. I don't know why they gave up on the pine leaves, but they put on oak leaves. It's kind of funny. And saguaro cactuses, and nobody does yuccas yet, and the way I find out about them is, let me just give you an example. Do you know where any of them are?
Me personally?
Asking you directly? This is how
I see them when I'm driving down the highway, but I don't really pay attention that often. I know there's one near the Getty, which I see all the time on the 405, but.
Oh, that's the one the little teeny one? I showed you that one, I think.
Unless that's the teeny one. I think I see it because it sticks out pretty, and it's pretty ugly. And you're thinking. And
once you get a handle on them, they do stick out. So if anybody in the audience here knows of any, let me know. I'll tell you an interesting story. I saw one with a cherry picker, the workers way up there working on the antennas. It's one of those cranes. And I went and talked to the foreman, and he says, oh yeah. He says, well, the workers have to wear a dose meter. And if it turns into the red, they have to come back down and get out of the radiation, because it is rather strong radio waves. In fact, here's what he said. He says, if a bird builds a nest outside of the antenna, the eggs won't hatch. But if they build it inside of the antenna, since the radiation goes out and not inward, everything's fine. So you do find birds living in some nests. Any other questions? I learned way too much about all this.
No, that's fascinating. I think it's really great.
Shot over 150 trees.
A couple people have said it's really amazing. The Saguaro cactus towers are pretty incredible. I hadn't really thought about those. And you said there's others. So is that the only other thing besides trees you found? The cactuses?
Well, as far as cactus, there's only saguaro cactuses. But
and are there any other? I don't know.
Well, there's apparently a cliff face that's fake.
Oh, really?
Out in Pasadena, but I haven't found where it is yet.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, if anybody knows of it, I think we should tell George. So.
Well, it's the trees. There are some oak trees, but what cracks me up is the eucalyptus trees. They are so weird. Any other questions? Oh, by the way, it doesn't hurt you if you live underneath one.
It doesn't. The radiation. I should have asked you that. Yes, the radiation doesn't harm us for being underneath them.
The thing is because of the inverse square law, every so much of distance, it cuts down by half. Mm-hmm. So every 10 feet it's half as strong. Every another 10 it's half as strong again. So
you're saying by the time it gets to us, it's pretty
to the ground.
normal.
Yeah,
okay.
You're going to get more holding onto your phone next to your ear all day long. So use a speaker. Yeah, use a speakerphone adapter in your car. Plus, you shouldn't have your hands on the phone while you're driving. Anyway, you hear me, everybody? No, hands free.
Somebody wrote, "Did you learn about 5G?"
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know of any towers of that anywhere. They aren't, well, you know, I can't tell if they're 5G or not because they look basically the same.
Because they've got the video cameras on them too. That's what 5G is, right?
I don't know. They don't video cameras.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking.
it's not a part of it. No.
Okay.
I mean, there might be some on there, but they're for reasons not related to cell phones. What I learned early on is that once somebody made a quote unquote tree, city managers saw that and said, hey, we want that too, you know, because it doesn't look like towers anymore. It doesn't look like radio towers anymore. And according to that fella that showed me, Preserved Treescapes is the name of that company in Oceanside area. Preserved Treescapes. The cell phone people were not happy that they had to make trees because they're twice as expensive to make a tower as faked as a tree. And they are getting better and better and better. And it's really hard to see them unless you look for that same color and straight trunks and all those other signs.
Okay, well, thank you so much, George and Mimi and Donna. If anybody's got any more questions, I think they could put them in the chat, or all of these three have websites and you can contact them. As I said before, you can see the exhibition online. I think we put it in the chat early on, the link to the exhibition. So you can see this work again, along with the other 9 photographers who were chosen for Project 2020. We really hope that you come to see it in the gallery sometime in maybe September or October when we open again, but we'll let you know about all that. And I just want to thank everybody for coming today, and thank you so much to the artists for presenting your work. It's was really heartfelt and fascinating and interesting, and yeah, so thank you all for coming, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
I do have a question. Is there any inkling as to when the gallery might be open for viewing?
We're not opening until September for
I see.
yeah.
Will this show be there?
Yeah.
Sarah, yes, I would love to have Scotty briefly share the name of the project, how it came about.
Okay, sure.
If that's okay, yeah. So it's
That's fine.
called I Do Still. Go ahead, Scotty Jeanette.
Are you there? Did I?
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm here. I didn't speak up at the time. I was trying to fix my makeup, so I'm crying. First of all, thank you for including us as well. The term "I do still" is probably one of the most sacred lines in that whole piece that Mimi did, because when Marcy only did one event for her book when it came out, and it was the one and only book reading that a book club in San Jose called the Wine and Book Club ever had. They just could never agree on what books that they should have, so they decided to do Marcy's. And in the middle of talking about it, after she did the reading, they asked her, you know, at the time we had been married 28 years, and we had already kind of talked a little bit about, like, would we ever have a commitment, or whatever you call it, a renewal of your vows. Someone said, are you guys going to renew your vows when you hit 30 years married? And Marcy said, no, our vows are still working pretty good. If anything, it would be an I do still ceremony. So the last year of Marcy's life was the hardest for her, and that's when everything kind of started to skid sideways. And yet we were coming up on, it was the 29th year of our marriage, and we were coming up to 30. And I started saying, look, we get to have a ceremony, right? Because I can't wait to wear a wedding dress. And so she said, well, I've been thinking a little bit about it too. And I think I found some rings. And so she picked out, and she showed me these rings, and we bought them so that I could have a feminine diamond. And in September, actually in July, she actually passed in October, but that following April was going to be our ceremony. And when the rings came in, she goes, let's just wear them now. And there was a part of me where my heart leapt, and I knew why. So we had our own little ceremony on a bench up on our hill behind our house. And she put that ring on my finger and said, I do still.
Oh.
So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your story. And I see you're lovely. You've got one of Mimi's pictures behind you right on the wall there. So that's great. Yeah, I can see just a small version of it there. But yeah, we've got a bigger one in the gallery. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Mimi and Donna and George. I think it was a really wonderful to hear you speak about your work. And yeah, and thank you also to Scotty Jeanette for speaking about Mimi's work and talking about the process and everything. So, okay. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. Thank you, or evening, wherever you are. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you.